Strikes back? Not quite, but Xbox is about to take on the trolls. I think all of us probably have a story about one time we were in a chat room playing Xbox and, well, things just got out of hand and you were probably on the receiving end of some bad language and or other things. And so Microsoft has announced today that they are overhauling at least the transparency aspect of their strike system for Xbox communication and platforms being banned from the service. So this is a pretty big deal because if you find yourself on the wrong end of this system, you could be locked out of your account anywhere up to a year or longer, depending on the severity of what you have done. So what Microsoft is trying to do here is add just quite a bit of transparency to the process. And so let's dive into the new strike system that Xbox is unveiling today. So this chart, which we'll kind of dig into here, is realistically how Microsoft is going to approach the system. So let's just kind of walk through. So Xbox new enforcement strike system is designed to educate basically the user about the severity and the effect of the strikes. You can get up to 8 strikes. Now that sounds like a lot. That's 8 strikes on your account before really bad things happen. However, you can get more than 1 strike for a single infraction. As an example, if you do something like really vulgar or sexually related, you can get multiple strikes, and illegal things can still get you outright banned. So just kind of keep that in mind. But each strike results in a suspension from Xbox's social features for a varying length of time, just again, depending on the severity of it. Now, this is where it's kind of getting into the details. Every user, as of today, is being reset. So if you had any sort of strike on your account previously to today, you are being reset back to 0. However, if you are currently in a penalty box, you have to serve out that sentence, if you will, about how before you get reset back to 0. So just keep that in mind. So here is the ladder of severity that Microsoft is kind of talking about here. So you can kind of see the process. So profanity is 1 strike. Cheating, surprisingly, is only 1 strike. I guess it depends on like how you're cheating. I would think would potentially ratchet things up, because you could look at the sexually inappropriate stuff. That is 2. Harassment or bullying, again, ratchets it up, and hate speech and all that. So you can see how Microsoft can apply multiple strikes for a single infraction. Now, on the enforcement system, when you get a single strike, basically the first 2 strikes, you will have a penalty for a day, then 3 days, and 7 days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 months, and then up to a year if you hit that 8 strikes on your account. Now, keep in mind that what Microsoft is doing here is that after 6 months, a strike will fall off. So if you've gotten 1 and you got suspended for a day, and then 7 months go by and you get another, you don't now have 2, you are back to 1 strike because you've basically served out your sentence and you are now a good user. I will point out one thing is that Microsoft does point out here that is completely wrong about this enforcement stacking journey. They say it says the user reads the community guidelines and improves behavior. Let's be honest, nobody's going to be reading those at this point because the people who are getting strikes are probably just loud-mouthing it anyways. But I will give Microsoft credit here. This is much more transparent and easier to understand about how this is going to all affect. Now, you might be saying, but Brad, where am I on this strike journey? Because I have done things and I need to know. So there's a second component to this where Microsoft will let you easily see where exactly you stand within the basic process of the strike system. And so you'll have this dashboard, if you will, and that shows you how many strikes you have, your current penalty, and everything else. And so it gives you better insight into what is going on. Microsoft does point out, they said in 2022, fewer than 1% of all players received temporary suspensions, and only a third of those received a second. So the likelihood of somebody getting 1 strike and then getting another is actually pretty low. So what would be like a repeat offender sort of thing. But yeah, it's obviously a pretty big deal that if you do get a strike, you really need to straighten up. And Microsoft is pointing a few things out because the real question becomes is like, hey, what if you and your buddies don't like somebody you're playing with and like 10 of you immediately file complaints about a single user? Are they just going to get an instant strike and bada bing, bada boom, you have now been canceled by the group that you were playing with for no apparent reason? Microsoft goes on to say in their write-up that all reports are evaluated and that there are no automated enforcement actions based solely on the fact that a report was made. That is their statement that says basically, yeah, you cannot gang up on a user and get them kicked off. we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. Obviously, I'm going to take Microsoft at face value, but until we understand truly how this works, because you would have to imagine, like, let's just say there are no automated systems, but you would have to think that if one individual got 10 people reporting it, it would elevate if they've done anything wrong. Because, right, you could imagine they said one bad word, and then 10 people record it or whatever, report it, and then maybe that does, amplify them up through the system just a little bit. However, they will not automatically be kicked off the system. And Microsoft goes on very specifically to try to counter this and says no volume of inaccurate reports results in enforcement. Keyword being inaccurate reports. So if there's something minor, you could still maybe ding somebody if you had a whole bunch of people really reporting. It says only reports that have been reviewed by the Xbox safety team and determined to be accurate results in enforcement. So Microsoft is, to their credit, there's no perfect moderation. Let's be real clear here. It is incredibly hard to moderate online content, especially online live services where things aren't written in text, right? They're all voice, they're all audio, they're video. And so moderation is exceptionally hard. It's been a hot topic in social media, and let's be real, Xbox Live services are social media. Like, at the end of the day, they are a form of it, and Microsoft is doing their best and at least trying to be transparent rather than people just getting kicked out. Now, before you think, wow, it takes 8 strikes to get completely kicked off, Microsoft very clearly wrote that they reserve the right to permanently suspend all functionality of account, including access to purchases for illegal activity. Illegal activity isn't purely defined, but you could say, like, the one that's real interesting that has been recent is, what about emulators, right? That was a hot topic that came out, was that like last week or 2 weeks ago, where people were running emulators in non-dev mode and suddenly finding themselves on the wrong side of a suspension. And so what constitutes illegal activity? It can almost guarantee you that it's written in Microsoft statements, that it's Microsoft gets to determine, because what about gray areas that technically maybe not be illegal, but not really known? Microsoft will ultimately have the final decision, and you probably really don't have anything you can do about it. So Microsoft says that you can appeal things. I could not think of the right term there. Can appeal things, and that potentially could get a strike lifted. So you're not completely locked out if somebody says, hey, you've got a strike in your account, you were done. But yeah, the point here is that Microsoft is making pretty, I don't know about significant changes here, but they're being much more transparent about the strike system. They're laying out the laws of the land so that it does become easier to know where you live in the world of strike systems. Hopefully, everybody listening to this never gets a strike, because everybody listening to this one is above the grade, if you will. But if you do get a strike, a single strike isn't really a big deal. 2 strikes, honestly, doesn't seem to be too big of a deal. It's when you start getting above 3 strikes that you should probably maybe just take a long look in the mirror and maybe tone it down just a little bit, because clearly something is not quite right, and you're getting dinged a lot. Anyways, I am very much in favor of this. Hey, a happier, healthier community is a good place to play. To the point where, honestly, I am usually just in a chat room by myself, because I don't like hearing what other people say, because it's usually just so profane. Or, let's be honest, it's usually like a fan running or just massive amounts of background noise. But that's not what Microsoft is trying to tackle. They are trying to keep things just a little bit cleaner. And so, yeah, we'll see how it plays out. If you get a strike, I'd love to know how you think the system is. But either way, that's what's going on with Xbox and strikes. And as always, make sure to keep it subscribed here, because only BS on this channel is me.